Welcome to the Gastro Girl Podcast. We bring together patients, experts, and health advocates who are all here to help you optimize your health. Here's your host, Jacqueline Gaulin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Gastro Girl Podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Gaulin. In this episode, we're diving into an invisible force that shapes every aspect of our lives, gravity. It's not just pulling us down, it's influencing our bodies, minds, and even our emotions. My guest today is the amazing visionary Dr. Brennan Spiegel, a physician, researcher, and author of the groundbreaking new book, Pull, The Science of Gravity and How It Shapes Our Health and Happiness. We'll explore why gravity is so much more than a physical force, how it connects to digestion, mood, and resilience, and how understanding it can transform our approach to health. Welcome, Dr. Spiegel. It's so great to see you again.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you too.
I think the last time you were on our show, you published this amazing paper on gravity and the gut and IBS, and it was very fascinating. We did that episode. And it was one of the most popular episodes that we had.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a good discussion.
Great. So let's jump into this. So you have a new book that's coming out in early October called Pull, and I am so excited to hear what inspired you to write this.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on again. This book is called Pull, like you said. It's how gravity shapes your body and steadies the mind and guides our health. So here's what it looks like. I'm very excited about that. And really, it's an extension of what we talked about before, but it's really about the entire human body now. And this all started because of a family story. I had a situation with a family member. So it's my mother-in-law who was experiencing cognitive decline and was in an assisted living facility. And she found herself lying flat a lot. And about the same time she was lying flat, she was developing bloating and some abdominal pain, depression, slow digestion. And I started thinking, we're not supposed to lie flat all day. We're designed to stand up and to move and to engage our body and to engage with gravity. And that changes everything in the gut, but also the whole body is managing gravity. And that's what led me to research this, write the paper that we talked about last time, which focuses a lot on gravity in the gut. Then I realized that, boy, the whole body is involved. And that's what this book is about and what you can do about it, too, not just theoretical.
It's interesting that you mentioned lying flat. I have a therapy dog, and I visited a nursing home every week. And today, I was there this morning, and we went into one room, and there was a wife was there with her husband laying in the bed, just laying. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, he's so miserable." I'm like, "Oh, what's wrong?" She's like, "He's so constipated." And he's literally like laying, not even with his head on a pillow, just completely flat. Of course, I had to tell him about the Dr. Che's kiwi a day
study
thing. Yeah. So she's going to talk to her doctor about that. But I'm like, there's evidence about that. But it's kind of interesting. Like, and how many people are in the hospital beds and they're struggling with, and not only with the medicine, but also just that can constipate them, but
Absolutely.
just the laying there.
I mean, we take some of the, sickest people, vulnerable people physically in the hospital, and then we lie them down for days or weeks or even longer. We're not supposed to lie down like that. That's giving into gravity. And so then we're perplexed when those same people develop bowel ileus, constipation, or they get cardiovascular issues and lightheadedness, bed sores, blood clots in the legs. These are all forms of gravity intolerance. And if we stand up and move, we're less likely to have all those things happen. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It can lead to constipation because the bowels pancake upon themselves. It's okay to sleep at night. Sure, we're resting the bowels as we're resting our brain. But as we get up in the morning, the bowels wake up with us. And they need to hang and suspend. It's like a functional stack. It's on a suspension system, actually, inside the belly. And that's what opens up the belly, why it's important to stand up straight, have a strong back, straight spine, strong abs. That opens up the abdominal cavity and it allows the system to move better. And that way you don't get the bacterial overgrowth and gas formation and constipation and bloating. It all is interrelated.
When you look at the human body, the organs aren't stuck to our rib cages, right? They're almost suspended when you look
Yeah.
at models. So that it actually makes sense.
So we don't talk a lot about that as the connection points. And so there's something that doctors rarely talk about, and it's called, the technical term is tensegrity, and that means tensile integrity. And basically what that means is being able to bend and stretch without breaking. Kind of like a tree in the wind will bend but not crack. And that has everything to do with how the internal systems connect to one another. So just like, ornaments hang off of a Christmas tree and they're connected by, a thread of some sort, our intestinal system and all of our viscera are hanging from the ceiling tack, connected by ligaments up to our diaphragm, which is then connected to our rib cage and our back and the spine, which is the central chassis that holds everything up. And the connection points themselves need to be strengthened through resistance training, for example, through various exercises like hypopressive exercises we might talk about that strengthen your inner connection points so that the whole system can sort of bend without breaking, so to speak. And that's a big deal for our anatomy and physiology.
Yeah. So going back to your mother-in-law, did you discover any insights, and that, and how did that prompt you? How did you address the fact that she was declining and you made that connection?
Yeah. So, the advice that every nurse knows in every hospital or nursing home is to get up and move. And why? It's because we need to pump our muscles, pump the hydraulic systems in our body. We're pumps and tubes all the way up and all the way down. Your lymphatic system, the veins, the gut itself is a pump and tube system. We have the cardiovascular system, and there's even little sensors called baroreceptors inside of your major vessels like the aorta that are constantly measuring the pressure from the blood. And if you stand up too quickly, your heart will start to pick up to make sure you don't faint. But if you don't have enough hydration in your body, if the pumps and tubes are not filled with salt water, we're going to have trouble managing gravity. So the recommendation was drink a lot of fluid, make sure salt balance is adequate, use compression socks, stand up and move as often as you can. Our goal in life is to stand up and stay up as long as we can and as well as we can until eventually we're full back.
I'm admiring your posture now. I can tell you're standing and doing your podcast. I feel like an inferior now. I'm sitting at my desk.
Well, I have a standing desk. And in the book,
great.
I talk about that. A standing desk, balance board, wobble board. I wear a weighted vest typically throughout the day to weight my body down.
Wow.
And it makes me stronger.
That's great. This is so fascinating. So as you said, gravity shapes our skeleton, circulation, and digestion. Mm-hmm. So what surprised you most about your research?
I think what really surprised me was not just how the physical body manages gravity, the things we've been talking about, the pumps and the tubes and the muscles and the bones, but also how it affects our mental health, how our nervous system itself is managing gravity. And it turns out we all have a special sense called gravisception. This is just like it sounds. It's your ability to perceive gravity. And our bodies are constantly making sense of the earth that we're on. It's Mother Earth. We grew out of this planet. We evolved from it. Physics came first, and biology came second, and then psychology emerged from that. And so what our bodies are doing is constantly keeping track of the Earth's pull through the inner ear, for example, that's keeping you from toppling over, through the nervous system, collecting all of these millions and trillions of data points from the pressure on your bottom, on your feet, and it all goes into the brain. And the brain has an area called the insula that is like the control panel for gravity. And it is interpreting gravity and deciding what to do about it, to rebalance, but it also affects your mental health. And that's the most surprising part, is this idea of anxiety and depression possibly being related to misperceiving the force of Earth's pull itself. And that was really shocking to me when I got deep into that literature.
Now, have the astronauts experience helped you understand health on the Earth?
That's right. So in the book, I have a whole chapter dedicated to astronauts and what we can learn from astronauts. And it's really amazing. We take the strongest members of our species, of mind and body, and we select them out to go up into space. And when the cameras turn off, a lot of them are having issues. They have
Oh,
stomach issues. They can get bloated. Their microbiome gets thrown off. All those trillions of gut bacteria, they evolved at sea level like we did. And it
oh my
turns out the higher you go in a jet, for example, you get people get jet belly. Higher up in high altitudes, the microbiome changes, and it changes even more in space.
God.
Serotonin, which is developed mostly in the gut from the microbiome, gets thrown off in space. They get headaches, they get vision problems, they get kidney stones. So we actually need gravity. It's like there's a Goldilocks zone. Too much gravity, too little gravity. We each have our own sweet spot for gravity.
So you said it affects the serotonin, which is also in the gut. So
Yeah.
do you find that, or have there been studies, are astronauts, because they're so high up, more depressed or anxious in
Yeah, there's
space?
a lot of research looking at that right now by the space agencies, SpaceX and NASA. If we're going to send astronauts into deep space to get to Mars, for example, first of all, we better have some way of simulating gravity, because without gravity for a long period of time, the bones start to thin out, the immune system starts to give in, the microbiome it leads to leaky gut. Literally have seen increased permeability or leakiness of the gut lining in space. So we're going to need to have some centrifuge, like in Space Odyssey. Remember 2001
Yeah.
Space Odyssey, where they had that spinning thing to
Oh yeah.
simulate gravity? Diet is going to be very important in space. So yeah, there's all sorts of issues that we're looking at, including anxiety and depression from not having the grounding of the Earth itself.
Yeah, the latest round when those astronauts were stuck up there for way longer than they needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're smiling for the cameras and all that, but like you said, behind the scenes, it's probably not so happy. And there's probably a lot of things that
A
they probably have to
bizarre
recover.
experience.
Yeah.
It's an otherworldly physics that our minds and bodies are not used to. And so it's not straightforward, even for these incredibly trained astronauts, to manage their bodies and minds.
Wow.
And so, we feel that if you just get on a roller coaster, for example.
Uh,
You go
I
on a
am
roller
not a
coaster, you
role.
fall. We've talked about this before. You get
Yeah.
the butterflies in your belly, right? So that's a sign that the gut and gravity are very closely related. If you have a gravitational challenge, you're in an airplane and there's turbulence, or elevator falls quickly, some people get a really strong feeling in their belly.
I do. Like we talked about this before. I
Yeah.
am not a roller coaster person. I don't enjoy that. Those
Yep.
rides that do that. That is,
Yeah.
it's because of that. It's very closely knit together, I guess.
We see that a lot with people who have irritable bowel syndrome or chronic abdominal symptoms. Is many cases they, don't want to go on a roller coaster because, like, well, I'm having those feelings all the time. I don't need to experience that on a roller coaster, or other people
Yeah.
they throw up their hands and they're excited,
I know, like my 5-year-old niece.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, are you crazy? Just kidding. So, but in all seriousness, I think, the way that you describe emotions and mental health is really interesting. And I think in your book, you describe depression as literally a feeling of being dragged down. And it makes sense if you really think about what gravity is. But can you explain that connection a little bit more? Because this is truly fascinating.
Yeah, and this is based on the work of Dr. Lachlan Kent in Australia. And he developed this idea of mental gravity. And in fact, he and I now have a brand new podcast that we're launching called The Gravity Doctors, to
I
talk
love
about
it.
the mind and body side of all of this. And he discusses how depression is almost like you're living on a planet with too much gravity. If you think about it, you get out, it's hard to get out of bed. You're exhausted. Your body language, you're hunched over, looking down at your feet, don't have the energy to just get through the day. It's almost as if you're not designed for this planet. And you can see, if that's the way your mind and body are organized around the pull of the planet, that it can really undermine your quality of life. And this has implications for even how to treat depression, because what is thought to be happening is the brain itself is misperceiving the pull of the earth. It's so fundamental. I mean, it's literally the basis of our existence. are these fundamental forces of physics. And there's only two that we manage: gravity, electromagnetism, and that's it. The other two forces that are fundamental, one of them has to do with stars. It doesn't even have to do with us. And the only other one basically keeps us from exploding. So as long as we're not exploding, there's two things we have to manage. It's gravity and electromagnetism. And both of those, the brain is a major source of gravity management. And if you're thrown off, we need to restore your relationship to gravity mentally. And this is where virtual reality, flotation therapy, sunlight exposure to boost serotonin, diet, exercise, serotonin boosting, literally elevating mood versus depressing. There's a verticality in our nervous system.
This is so fascinating. I'm trying to understand what comes first, the lack of the serotonin, or is it something because we thought it was a chemical, right? That's why these treatments are prescribed. And again, we're not belittling anyone's struggle with depression. We're just exploring, we're exploring this research that Dr. Spiegel has done. And I'm trying to understand, is it this lack of serotonin, and does that have, and it's not reacting to the gravity correctly?
So the idea, and just to be clear, everyone's story is their own unique story, and doesn't mean that gravity intolerance is at the root of all depression or anything like that, to be clear. But we've learned that serotonin is very important for gravity management. And when people think of serotonin, they typically think of a happy chemical. It's something in your brain, and it elevates your mood. Literally, elevate is up. You look up to the heavens for inspiration. Church steeples point to the heavens. We talk about feeling high when serotonin explodes in our brain from a psychedelic. And we feel low and down when we're depressed. We literally can't get up. So that's that verticality. But serotonin, most of it is not in the brain. It's in the gut. And it's based upon your microbiome. There's a relationship between the diet you eat, how much tryptophan you get in your diet. And there's certain foods we could talk about that boost tryptophan levels. And then tryptophan is an amino acid that gets converted into serotonin in the gut with the help of your microbiome. And so what kind of microbiome you have, the diversity of it, and what kind of foods you eat will interact to determine how much serotonin you have. And then what happens next is fascinating, because serotonin hitches a ride on platelets, which then brings it throughout the entire body. Every corner of the body is touched by serotonin. And without serotonin, you and I would be flaccid sacks on the ground, unable to get up like a baby. Babies have very little serotonin because they haven't colonized their intestines yet with their own unique microbiome. That's part of why they can't even get up yet. Serotonin, when you have it, primes the muscles so that you can literally stand up. It primes the pumps and tubes so that you can pump the blood up into your brain. It does all sorts of things that help you literally stand up physically and emotionally to the force of gravity. So you can see how depression is it's not just a metaphorical feeling low. It's a literal feeling low because you don't have the ability to stand up to the force of gravity. And that's why things like exercise and diet and sun exposure are so effective, because they boost serotonin levels naturally.
It makes so much sense. I'm just so fascinated by this. And it brings me to my next point. The gut microbiome is so critical here. And I know that we're not there yet. I mean, I have so many friends and people that I meet in my daily life. Oh, we heard about those tests that can look at your gut and see what your microbiome is like. But then there's no real evidence-based pathway to say, okay, you need this and it's going to do X. We're not there yet, but you can see how even the gravity serotonin connection lays the groundwork for what's happening in the microbiome research area.
Yeah, that's right. And you're right, yet know enough about how to fingerprint each individual microbiome. Right. There's been efforts with stool studies, and I really want to see that continue to expand. But we know that there are some natural ways to boost serotonin and do it through your diet. And one way is by ingesting certain foods. I call this the Stack 10 diet. So
is this in the book? Is this in the book?
Yeah, this is in the book.
Oh, another great reason to get this book.
So it's in the book. And, without going through all the details, STACKTEN are 10 foods that boost serotonin. So, for example, S is salmon and seeds, and T is turkey, and A is avocado and chicken and chickpeas and kidney beans and so on and so forth, eggs and
Nice.
nuts and tofu. And if you eat that, you're going to give your body the substrate it needs to boost serotonin. But also there are certain foods that have polyphenols in them, which can help kind of protect the gut lining and help move the bacteria towards serotonin production. So these are found in, for example, green tea and certain, and pure cocoa and a few other foods, turmeric, I believe, that combined with high tryptophan foods can help to boost your, gut health and make those serotonin factories come to life so that you can fight gravity.
Now, as a physician, do you recommend to your patients that to try to do this through diet, or do we have to take extra vitamins for all of this?
Yeah. Well, vitamins, of course, are really important in general, to maintain the electrolyte balance and to maintain, the immune system. Vitamin D, for example, very important for immune modulation. I take vitamin D every day personally. Some people take A, D, E, and K, but it's a little hard to tie that all to sort of gravity management or to serotonin in particular. But yeah, no, I think as part of a holistic view of health and longevity, it's important to think about how to boost your nutritional status in general. Yeah.
And every patient's different. I know we can't make a
right.
sweeping statement, but I was just wondering if some people are like, no, you don't need to take any extra vitamins. I also take vitamin D. Yeah, I agree with you on that. But this mind-body gravity connection, is there anything else that you want to say about this? Because it's so important. Like, how does it play into the sensations and things like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was mentioning virtual reality. I mentioned that briefly.
Yeah.
And, we use a lot of virtual reality, not for gaming and entertainment, but for improving mental health and physical health. Here in the hospital, we use it at Cedars-Sinai. So for example, somebody that's lying in bed and feeling down, literally and physically, we'll put them in a virtual reality headset and simulate flying up into the clouds and flying over landscapes.
Oh, wow.
And what we've shown is when we do this, it literally changes the body. It improves stress hormone, reduces stress hormone levels. It lowers heart rate and heart rate variability, which is the beat-to-beat variation in the heart rate. It reduces the white blood cell count, which is crazy to me, how there's this mind-body connection. And we've published this research. So that's another example where we use a form of mental gravitational therapy to literally feel and rehearse this otherworldly physics, like you are floating up out of the bed into the sky and out of the hospital.
I bet everyone loves that part.
So we do that. Yeah. And then there's something called flotation therapy. And this is really well evidence-based. It's based upon like floating in the Dead Sea and salt water.
Yes.
And that gives people this real sense of buoyancy and relaxation. And there's been research that if you simulate that in a tank and turn the lights out and warm the water up, people feel very calm. It lowers all the stress in their body, and even their brains change in functional MRI studies that have been done with flotation therapy.
Yeah, I've read about that. I've never tried it. I would love to try that. It sounds like so amazing.
Yeah.
So you talk about the concept of gravity resilience. What is this, and why is it so important for our digestive health and our overall health?
Yeah. So, hopefully I'm making the point here that our relationship to gravity will very much determine our health. We've been talking about the gut, but just think about what is lower back pain, if not gravity intolerance, dizziness, inner ear problems, heart failure, swelling in the ankles, even hemorrhoids. These are forms of gravity intolerance, right?
Yeah.
And so gravity resilience is your ability to leverage the force of this planet for good, for strength. And I divide it up into 3 parts. There's your gravity fortitude, which is sort of how strong are you? Can you stand up literally? How are your abs and your back and your spine and your musculoskeletal system and your posture? And the pumps and tubes on the inside, are they pushing up the blood and the fluid and all that against the force of gravity? That's the first part. The second is gravity sensing. How well can you sense that force of gravity? We talked a little bit about this, the inner ear and all the systems in the nervous system. The third we've talked about is mental gravity. Or do you feel up? Do you feel down? And so, based upon those three components in the book, I describe 8 different gravitypes. And I have a quiz that you can take online on my website where you can figure out which of the 8 gravitypes best describes you and what to do about it. Now, this isn't a substitute for seeing doctors. I'm a doctor, but just to get a better sense of your relationship to gravity. How long can you stand on one leg without falling over? That's one of the questions I ask about.
Oh,
How
wow.
strong is your grip? Can you hang? How long could you hang from a bar without falling off? These are measurements of your gravity resilience.
Oh, wow. That's so great. And now we already touched on some of these. You say how exercise, diet, meditation, and weight loss all enhance this gravity resilience. Do you have some practical strategies that listeners can try today?
Yeah, well, one thing that I do, which I mentioned briefly, is I actually wear a weighted vest normally at work. And I'm not saying you need to jump right into this, but I practice what it feels like to live on a bigger planet with more gravitational pull, which again can feel like depression. But if you're doing it on purpose and trying to practice standing up to gravity, it could actually bolster your gravity resilience. And you can lose weight too, by the way. There's evidence of this. So if you wear a weighted vest, a standing desk, I also put ankle weights on my ankles when I'm standing around, which I'm not saying everyone needs to do. But in the book, I actually did a self-experiment. I called it Operation Gravitate. And I weighed my body down and I stood on a balance board at work for 8 weeks. And I lost about 4 pounds without doing really anything.
Oh, wow.
And I got way stronger by, it's kind of like a baseball player who puts a weighted donut around the bat.
Yeah.
In the on deck circle. And then they take off the weight and then they feel stronger and faster.
Yeah.
And that's the idea of building your gravity resilience through weight training. And some people now wear weighted backpacks or vests when they're walking or running. And that's all part of it too.
That's so interesting. And it makes sense because you're actually forced to use your body, your core, everything. And that engages in it's energy. You're using energy.
Exactly. Yeah. Increase your metabolic rate. And there's something called the gravitastat, which is built into your bones. It actually measures how much weight you have, and it will try to increase metabolic activity in your body if you weigh yourself down all of a sudden. So there's a whole bunch of interesting ways the body works like this.
Oh, wow. So just to, get into a little more of the digestive part, I know we talked about this last time, but I think it's so interesting and important. What role does gravity play in our digestion and gut symptoms?
Yeah. So, the gut is sort of like a sack of potatoes. And we may have talked about this last time a bit, where it's dangling down in your belly in the upright position. And we have these suspension cables. It's called the mesentery. And the mesentery doesn't get enough love, by the way. It's really amazing. And it's actually an organ unto itself. It's not just like a sheet of tissue. It's doing a lot of work to hold up your gut. And it turns out it's tied right into your mid-back.
Okay.
And so if you are hunched over, then the intestinal sac is going to fall down into your pelvis. If you stand up and stand up straight, then it pulls up those cables, the mesentery, and that pulls up that sack of potatoes. And it opens it up like we talked about before. Some people, though, for example, people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or in some cases, postural tachycardia syndrome or POTS, would have particularly stretchy tissues on not just the outside where they have flexible joints, but on the inside where they have a flexible mesentery. And when we take an x-ray, we see that their belly sac basically collapses all the way down. So for people like that, I'll recommend that they swim rather than run. So they're in a vertical position and their belly isn't getting stretched out as much, for example.
Oh, interesting. I love it. And how can improving gravity resilience help with our digestive symptoms or even disorders like IBS?
Yeah. So if you're able to do all these things, strengthen your back, strengthen your abs, something called hypopressive exercises where you suck your belly in like you're taking that sack of potatoes and pulling it up into your chest, and then relax. And then do it again, suck in your belly as hard as you can. It really takes a lot of tension and relax. If you do that every day, you're strengthening the connection points, what I called tensegrity earlier, and you're strengthening that sack of potatoes and the suspension systems. These things can help lower back pain, pelvic pain, and abdominal pain, and improve digestion, because now you don't get as much bacterial overgrowth. It's almost like a garden hose. If it's laid out and coiled nicely, it won't kink and it won't get jammed up. But if it's not coiled up correctly and there's a kink in the hose, the water backs up. Same thing with the gut. It needs to lay out properly and not get smushed up in the belly, which leads to bacterial overgrowth, gas formation, bloating, and all sorts of issues.
It makes so much sense. And now, to all the GI peeps out there, gastroenterologists and GI clinics, why should gastroenterologists and gastroenterology teams, as well as patients, why should they care about gravity?
Yeah, I just gave a lecture just this weekend in Houston.
Oh, wow.
For what's called the TSGE. It's the Texas Society of Gastroenterology. It's one of the biggest GI societies in the country. And I spoke about gravity in the gut and about bloating. And we talked about a lot of the things I'm saying right here. And I have never seen so many doctors so excited about a talk that I've given than this one. And they came afterwards and said, boy, this makes so much sense. Why don't we ever talk about this? Why don't we ever do this? I said, well, now's this time to start doing it. Talk about strengthening the back. Talk about hypopressive activities. Screen for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome by looking at how far a pinky can pull back and how far your thumb can go. Can you touch your forearm, for example, with your thumb? These are all consequences of understanding the body in relation to gravity. Talk about good hydration. Talk about serotonin production. Now we have a whole new lens to think about the advice that we're providing. And I spent a lot more time talking about the back and its relationship to the gut than I ever did before thinking about gravity. And now it just comes into clear view. And when I speak with my patients about it, now they really have a different understanding of what abdominal obesity could be doing, what a scoliotic spine could be doing, what sedentary lifestyles and sitting all day can be doing to the gut. And it really makes sense to them.
Yeah, especially when they have patients who are in this, hamster wheel of trying to figure out what's going on. There's nothing that may show up that says, oh, you have this for sure, but they're getting these symptoms.
Yes.
And these are just really important ways to look at the patient's case and maybe think outside the box. It reminds me on some level of, what was it, 10, 15 years ago when the low FODMAP diet hit at ACG, and it was, we had Dr. Gibson there and Sue Shepard, and everyone was like, oh, nutrition, no one really knew. It wasn't a big thing, GI nutrition. They didn't really quite understand it. And then it was in the guidelines, and then there was more evidence around. Now it's one of the first lines of treatment for someone with IBS is looking at that dietary intervention. Do you see a place for this kind of work as we evolve our understanding of the gut and gravity?
Absolutely. I think this idea of bio-gravitational medicine is so cross-cutting, and yet it's also so consistent with what we already know. It's not like I'm proposing some crazy new therapies or some, weird directions. No, it's like, this is just another way of understanding how it all fits together. And I think if we approach it that way, we can provide more evidence-based support, whether we're talking about exercise or Tai Chi or strength training, which we know from randomized trials improves gut symptoms for sure. Or we're talking about vagus nerve stimulation. We haven't mentioned that today. A sort of experimental new approach to managing IBS and IBD. Well, what's going on with that? You know what that is? That's improving serotonin production in the gut. The vagus nerve is like a spigot to turn on serotonin in the body by just zapping the ear or the neck. That to me brings it back to gravity too.
Okay, so you have to talk about this. You have to talk more about this because we have a lot of listeners who have IBS symptoms, and IBD, and that is very interesting. So what is vagus nerve stimulation, and how does that fit into a treatment plan for patients who may be struggling with either IBS or IBD?
Definitely. So, and it's not a panacea, just to be clear.
Right.
And I'm not selling any vagus nerve stimulators. I don't have any
No, but it's
relationship with
another
gravity.
option for them to talk to
Yeah, it
their
is. And
providers
I
about.
actually, in the book, I experimented with a vagus nerve stimulator, and I talk about it in the book. I write about my experience with it because in my case, I have a fear of heights. Like, I don't like standing at the top of a really tall building. Okay. And I get those gut feelings. I mean, I get them on airplanes. I get it on
Yeah.
roller coasters, and I get it when I'm way up high. Like, I'm literally feel like I'm going to fall. Okay, fall to gravity. And so I did an experiment with virtual reality where I had to jump off a building, and it freaked me out. And
Oh,
so I did it first without vagus nerve stimulation, and then I turned on the vagus nerve stimulator. And I found that I was able to control my heart rate much better, control the stress response, and jump off the building. Now, it's not a perfect experiment, but it's in the book. And basically, what we're talking about here is the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It connects the brain with the heart and the gut, and basically the viscera. And it runs right through the neck. And it turns out one branch of it comes right up into the ear. So the type of stimulator I use is like an earbud. It just goes right in there in a very low level electrical stimulation. It doesn't hurt. It just feels like a tiny buzz. And it activates the vagus nerve. And in both directions, up towards the brain and down towards the gut. And there's evidence that that can start to change the microbiome, make it a little bit more diverse, and it can lead to more serotonin production. And so you don't have to use a stimulator. Even breath training through a pursed, like breathing through a pursed lips, like that, can activate, if you do it a bunch of times, the vagus nerve. I don't want you passing out.
I know.
And
No.
and now people are using this for IBS and IBD. It's
That's
still a bit
crazy.
experimental, but these therapies are available. They're quite safe. If you have a low heart rate, be careful. Always talk to your doctor.
Yes.
But they're generally very safe and can be effective for some people for managing also even anxiety and depression too. There's some evidence for that.
Yeah, I that's so interesting. And I love the term bio-gravitational medicine. Did you
Yeah,
coin that?
BGM. I coined that, yeah.
Of course you did. You're so brilliant. I love it. I love it because I'm already thinking like, wow, these things could be woven into many of the guidelines as an
Yes.
option for, right? Don't you think?
Well, just imagine if there was such a thing as a BGM clinic. And I write about this at the end of the book. What would that look like if you went to a bio-gravitational medicine clinic? Well, now people wouldn't be focused on just your heart or just your lung or just your gut. They would be looking at your whole mechanism, your whole body. What is your relationship to gravity? And we would look at the 8 gravitypes. We would break it down into the parts. And then we would have different doctors with different backgrounds, all thinking about gravity intolerance as one overarching human condition. And for some people, they need flotation therapy, tilt table therapy, inverted yoga. For other people, they might need serotonin boosting diet or more sunlight exposure or hanging bars. And for others, virtual reality therapy and all that. It would be a very different way of looking at the practice of medicine. We'd still do all the usual medicines and all that too, but add this other layer of understanding.
Well, I'd like to come work for you over there because that sounds just amazing.
Awesome.
That sounds so.
We got to build the clinic next.
Oh,
That's
that would be amazing. I think that is so cool. And on that note, how can patients starting to think differently about their symptoms, whether it's digestion, mood, or even fatigue through the lens of gravity, the way you've described it?
Yeah. So in the book, not that I need to keep bringing it back to the book.
No, I love this because it's like we're going to want more. I mean, we could talk all afternoon about this, but I know you got patients to see.
So there's a resource guide in the book. It's a big section at the back where I really try to break down all the different activities and exercises and diets that are related to managing gravity. And we've touched on a lot of them, but not all of them today. It goes on for quite a while. And the idea is if you thumb through that, and if you take the quiz online, it can help direct you to what are the exercises or diets or activities to think about to help strengthen your unique relationship to gravity. Again, always with a doctor and all that. I'm a doctor. We don't want to replace doctors with this. But, most of these recommendations are pretty straightforward. Do hypopressive exercises, drink enough fluid, make sure you have the right salt balance, check your grip strength and see how strong it is. How long can you stand on one leg? The things I talked about before. All of that's in the book and lays it out, like step by step what to do.
So tell us how listeners can get your book, and we'll have, what other resources you recommend. I know you have some website links that you're going to share with us.
Yeah.
We'll put in the show notes. And this is great. So
yeah, definitely. We'll put them in the show notes, but the book is called Pull, and you can find it wherever books are sold. It's also an audiobook. So I recorded 11 hours of talking, so you have to hear my voice for a long time.
Were you standing up the whole time?
Yeah, no, I was sitting down for that one. It was in a studio.
Awesome.
But although actually I wouldn't mind standing up. So, Amazon, so on. I have a website. It's my name, BrennanSpiegelMD.com. And on there, you can find links to the book, also my previous book. And we have a new podcast, The Gravity Doctors. So go to thegravitydoctors.com, just launching that right now to explore a lot of these issues in much more detail. And those are a few places to look.
That's perfect. And it comes out October 7th?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
I can't wait. Well, Dr. Spiegel, this has been such a treat. I always love talking to you. You always are such a big visionary thinker, and I can't wait for those gravitrons to open. I want to come to one of those clinics. It sounds so great.
Yeah, well, we'll have to start having conferences and start a new branch of medicine.
Yes, and I'm all for that. But thank you so much, Dr. Spiegel, for joining us and sharing insights from your incredible new book, Pull. I can't wait to read it. And I don't know about you listeners, but I'll never think about gravity the same way again after this conversation. If you'd like to learn more about gravity's impact on your health and how to build your own gravity resilience, be sure to pick up a copy of Pull. We'll put the links in the show notes. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the Gastro Girl YouTube channel and on all the other podcast platforms, so you'll never miss an episode. Until next time, don't forget to share, and subscribe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Gastro Girl Podcast. For more information and resources, please visit gastrogirl.com. Do you have a question for Gastro Girl? Please email podcast@gastrogirl.com. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in the Gastro Girl Podcast are not a substitute for medical advice from your healthcare professional. Please consult a licensed clinician in your state regarding all matters related to your health.